This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Zoned Properties.
With the cannabis industry now licensing projects in over 35 states medicinally and/or recreationally, market projections suggest that the real estate opportunity related to cannabis could boast a total addressable market of over $50 billion with projected growth. Zoned Properties is redefining the commercial real estate development process with tailored services for the emerging cannabis market. From securing real estate and project development to opportunities for expansion, Zoned Properties helps clients maximize their cannabis real estate investment and mitigate risk. Zoned Properties has a full spectrum of integrated real estate growth services for highly regulated industries, which include advisory services, brokerage services, and investment services. Zoned Properties has also created strategic partnerships to streamline your cannabis real estate projects, such as retail franchise opportunities, property technology and data solutions, or engineering and construction experts. Let Zoned Properties help you navigate regulatory nuances and launch your cannabis real estate project. Call them today at 877-360-8839 or email them at clients@zonedproperties.com. Once again, that's clients@zonedproperties.com or visit zonedproperties.com to learn more and receive a free project success checklist. Zoned Properties, targeted real estate intelligence for highly regulated industries.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Canna Health.
What if you had such a clear understanding of your own DNA and genetic makeup that you could make informed decisions about what type of cannabis products interact best with your system? Well, now you can with EndoDNA. EndoDNA is a simple DNA test that maps your entire endocannabinoid system and then matches that summary with the specific cannabinoid ratio and terpene profile that aligns with your unique genotype. Imagine being armed with personal information when visiting a dispensary. You'll have the power and capability to purchase products that best align to your genotype. Visit their website to purchase the EndoDNA collection kit and Endo Decoded report at endodna.com/product and use the promo code CONNECT15 for a 20% discount. Again, that's endodna.com/product and use the promo code CONNECT15 for a 20% discount. The future of cannabinoid therapeutics is here with EndoDNA. What's up, my fellow people of the plant? In this episode of Cannabinoid Connect, I'm talking with Jordan Highley. He's a money coach and brand builder at Make More Capital. After working as a public school educator, Jordan wanted to provide financial education to individuals who are looking to build generational wealth. Make More Capital is his financial education brand that seeks to empower ambitious people on how they can cut out expensive fees and keep more of their profit. During our conversation, we discuss cannabis history, which includes the historical context of why the plant was made illegal. We discuss legalization in Canada. We discuss fundamental analysis and why cannabis companies are currently undervalued at this point. We also discuss the plant as a tool to heal and to be productive. Last, we discuss the future of cannabis and all the potential that the plant holds. So I hope you enjoy this episode of Cannabinoid Connect as you watch or listen to my conversation with Jordan Highley, who's a money coach and brand builder at Make More Capital. Jordan Highley, aka at Make More Capital, man. I see you quite often and very active within the Twitter sphere. So it's nice to finally meet you and have you on the podcast.
Yeah, likewise, man. I try to be. I mean, I think we were a lot noisier at the beginning of the year, and now we're really just trying to hold our conviction, which, I mean, the thesis hasn't changed, right? The story is still there. It's just more of what we've sort of always expected from politicians, and it's just annoying to be slapped in the face again.
It is. It is. Yeah, my expectations when it comes to federal policies, elected officials at the federal level, I even at the state and local level in most cases, I tend to just kind of, I don't hold my breath, right? And kind of see how it plays out, because everything is so highly politicized today that, you know, they kind of use it for their own agenda in certain situations. I feel like in cannabis, I think is a perfect example of that, you know, and on both sides, you know, I think that it's a bipartisan issue that most Americans can get behind, and it's a smart strategic play from a political perspective to support that, you
I think
know?
it's one of the most popular bipartisan issue, if not like the most, and it's just such an easy victory. But at the same time, I mean, it's not like we're riding on them. We have to plan accordingly based on this opportunity, and ultimately, the longer it takes, the bigger it gets. So
Right. I
just
see it as a great opportunity, man. I'm waiting. I'm waiting for the vote with the NDAA, right? And see if safe banking is pulled from it, if it gets through, and either or, it's a win in my eyes because they're gonna be at a discount. The stocks are gonna be at a discount if it doesn't happen, and we're gonna get to buy more and accumulate more volume. And if it does pass, then that's a win for the industry as a whole, right? I mean, come on, we get
so
to
much
move
good
more.
comes. Yeah, just sorry to cut you off there. Just so much good
Yeah,
comes from this, right? Like
yeah. No, I
it's next step.
go ahead. Yeah. So let's talk about you, Jordan. So like, make more capital. You're a brand builder, a money coach. You're helping people invest, particularly and specifically within the cannabis industry. So tell us a little bit about your background and why cannabis, how you got started.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I guess it's a long story, but it was sort of me going back to my roots and sort of finding something that I was passionate about when I returned to Canada. After doing university, then going abroad to travel and teach English for a few years, and then I came back, and Canada was legalizing cannabis, and it's just something that naively, I guess, when I was going to school, I just never thought would happen. Like, of course it should, because this plant doesn't seem to do much harm. At the same time, alcohol is legal, tobacco is legal, right? So that definitely sparked my curiosity when I came back, and then learning about the history over time. Um, just it makes I don't know how it doesn't make everybody curious as to how we've gotten to this point and how so little has been done to change it. But I guess it's a long story. But at the same time, when I came home from traveling and teaching abroad, I had invested money with a financial advisor in Canada, and probably similar to how it happens or how it works in the U.S. Oftentimes, you'll have like a sales representative sell you equity funds, so you're not actually buying it yourself, but through something. And so I'd learned, though, that the financial advisor that I had entrusted with my money had not known the rules of the tax-free savings account that he let me open and whatnot. So I owed like $1,500 in tax penalties. So it was one of those situations where 2017, I just started going down the rabbit hole of money and learning about how that works. Have you gone down that rabbit hole yourself?
I'm starting to do it. I mean, I'm a novice, I would say, when it comes to investing, right? My real start in investing has been cannabis.
Right.
And like most, I jumped into the Canadian LPs, first and foremost. The
What
Aurora,
time frame if you can recall, did you sort of get started?
that would have been in like late 2016, then
Okay.
2017, right? So yeah, and it was
Got some
Aurora.
years under your belt, though. I mean, that's
But I sat, like, I didn't actively do it. I kind of bought at first when I heard about the major players, quote unquote, within Canada, and so I bought those up, and I just kind of sat and waited, and I didn't do much research or even learning about investing. I just knew that cannabis was big at the time. I have been getting more proactive in my understanding of the market and all that a little more just through like YouTube, man, to be honest, like following people on Twitter, following their channels and just learning kind of how they go about fundamental analysis.
right. Well, it's like taking other people's perspectives and their experience, what they've gone through, and then comparing it with what you know. Because you're right. There's so much stuff out there, so much content. There's a lot of good stuff. There's a lot of crap too, and it's hard to sift through it all. Um, but yeah, it's good that you've been in from the beginning because I first invested in Aurora. That was my first LP of mine in 2017, and this was when the first time I'd opened myself like my own self-directed account, and just to think of how quickly retail's expanded, even in just a few years, right? But
Right.
this was something though where I came from a household middle, like public worker parents working for the government. So like for me, investing was risky. I would never ever invest myself. And then sure enough, within 2 weeks as well, just in the fall of 2017, I double my money within that quick span. Now, obviously, I made a lot of bad decisions after that, but it just showed that, like, wow, this can really, like, equity obviously is a major way to build your wealth, obviously. So that just led me down sort of, yeah, building the brand to make more capital, which started out as personal finance, and a lot of people try that, but it's an avenue that's very difficult because it's a sensitive topic, and it's just so difficult to um, the coaching game is tough, but I'm glad I tried it and went through all that. But it's taught me a lot of, just other skills throughout that process.
Sure.
But it was essentially last summer that I really buckled down with the YouTube channel just to, it's a good way for me to stay on top of my investments, right? And um, as someone that has the experience, I just try to deliver the context with all the news. And like you said, it's big. You can't really ignore it, but it's interesting that you don't necessarily find it unless you're looking for it or involved in the community in a bit of a way. So it's slowly keeps creeping up though, which is
That's
great.
that's what's so unique about the time that we're in, though, right? It's like if you're in it, you know that this is coming, and you can see the discussions all around it. You see moves happening, but it's not mainstream yet, right? And a lot of it has to do with the federal prohibition. And I mean, once they start to slowly reform cannabis legalization, people are it's I feel like it's just gonna take off like most of these other meme stocks and other plays that we're seeing right now, you know?
Yeah. Well, there's a very good chance, just because of like all of the circumstances and the fact that these US MSOs are trading at valuations, cheaper than their third or fourth quarter in like 2018. It's nuts. And then if you look at the charts, right, you know that just history doesn't repeat, but it'll rhyme. There's going to be cycles, and like just as much as having the cannabis industry running from post pandemic lows to February. I mean, depending on how much experience you had, you would have known to trim some off the top and whatnot. And I did manage to, or I wasn't very active, or I could have capitalized better in hindsight. But at the same time, for me, like, and I think for you as well, we're young, right? We have an entire
Right.
lifetime of investing ahead of us. So why not make these mistakes when we're young and early? Um,
It's so true. Todd Harrison, this was months ago, he tweeted out like what song would you share like for cannabis right now or something like that, like what song relate or do you most think about during this time in cannabis legalization efforts. And
mhm.
I put the song, and I forget who it's by, but it's time is on my side, that Denzel Washington movie. I don't know if you remember it, but it's an oldie. It's a 70s
I know that
classic.
song though. I
Yeah,
can. The
and
long
it's
time
is
is
on
on
my
my
side.
side.
And that's the beauty about what you're saying, right? Is like we're fortunate to be, I mean, I'm in my early 30s, right? And I'm just starting to learn about this stuff. And it's one of the good things that's come out of the pandemic. I think a lot more people are starting to think about their futures and saving money and investing money and building their wealth. And that was one, time it was is an opportunity for me to kind of learn this area, and cannabis has been a great catalyst to do it.
Yeah, and what brought you into the cannabis space? Was it more the interest, or is it something that you used as a tool in your own life? And just curious what got you into it.
Yeah, it was definitely been a tool for me for the past, over 15 years after my athletic career. And I've always been a proponent of it. I've never understood the federal prohibition, and so once the pandemic hit, I was already investing before I jumped in the podcast game. But once the pandemic hit, I was laid off of my full time job, and I was like, "Fuck it! Like now's the time,"
Wake up call, one of
to
those.
yeah, it was just like I know that I can add some type of value by facilitating conversations with experts to get the word out, because that's what the industry is really lacking right now, or has been. I mean, there's more content that's being produced by a lot of great content creators and experts, but 2 years ago we didn't really have that education, and so that's what I saw it as an opportunity.
Smart of you to do that. Yeah, because well, when you think about it, it's up to individuals sort of taking that step, and then before you know it, media branches off with PR, branches off with, I don't know, events, MJ BizCon. It's just it all sort of interconnects and bifurcates into these. It's opportunity in a lot of spaces, and it's just so interesting. And I want to ask you a bit more about like the atmosphere in the U.S. just because the dynamic of states where it's legal, you've got one sort of way of life, and in other states, completely different, or probably not. Like it's still there, black market. It's not that it doesn't exist there, but it's just curious. Like, what would you say? Have you picked up on anything like that?
Jordan, that's a great question, man. It's a weird fucking time right now, right? Like everywhere globally, it's weird. In the
Hmm.
US, particularly, just because of how, like you said, diverse the states are, right? So, you've got divide and conflict on the political side, which we'll stay out of. That's kind of apparent, right? We know that. But also, like with cannabis, it's so different from state to state. Like, I'll give you an example. I live in Texas. I'm from New Mexico, and they just became legal. So like everyone's becoming more open, including like elderly people that I know in the community that I grew up in New Mexico. Like it's just becoming more accepted because now it's legal in the state.
And
Tex
what's weird too is just you need that switch, almost like, hey, it's not bad. So then they can be like, oh, well, it's not bad anymore because it's not illegal.
Right. Yeah, I have family members that like never really hated on it before but stayed away from it because it was illegal, and now that it is legal, they're like sparking up in their backyard and like like just loving it just because they're able to do so now. So
It's great. It just helps with the stigma too. Yeah, I love that's going away.
it's
So
great.
good to
Yeah,
hear.
it's great. So that's New Mexico, and then you got Texas, which is super prohibition, but like I don't feel it in large cities. So like Dallas is a big city, and like you can smell pot on the street, or you can, like if you're going out at night, like it's there. So I would imagine that cops, I mean, if you're smoking right in front of them, of course they're probably gonna lock you up or do something, hit you with a citation. But it's not that they're actively searching for it in the big cities. I would say in the smaller cities, it's like crazy town. It's like it's super conservative. Like they will throw handcuffs on you and
Right.
take you in. And I'm bringing this up because what's funny is my first hemp show or conference that I went to in Texas, it was at the end of 2020, and I think in December. It was in Houston, and there was people from California there. So you've got like people from California who are it's like so ingrained in their culture, and they like talk about it, and they're talking about strains, and then you've got the Texas crowd. And I never forget, like we went up to this room with all this group of people that we had met and got along with throughout the conference, and we were all smoking joints and passing around and drinking beers in the hotel room. And it was so funny to see like the dynamic play out of like the West Coast people, and they were like, what are you guys talking about Delta 8? What's Delta 8? And then you got like talking about all these
Right.
strains, and like, so it's a good question that you asked, because it is so all over the place right now, man. But the one thing that is common denominator is that the people who consume cannabis, there's this special bond that you share. It doesn't matter where you're from, because you know about the plant, you know what it does for you, and you know the opportunities that it presents.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's really cool. And yeah, I just imagine too, if you're not careful from California, you can do something a little bit too over the top in another state accidentally, right? And it can cost you. But yeah, I honestly, even in Canada, it just it's well, not to say that it sucks. It's just unfortunate that I don't know about you, but just there's been a lot less in-person stuff, obviously because of the past year and a half
Sure.
of the pandemic and stuff. But I do really look forward to when that can happen again. Um, just because since Canada's legalized, obviously not much has changed, but a lot of the things that most activists predicted accurately did, which youth use went down or at least didn't change. Impaired driving didn't all of a sudden increase. In fact, it decreased in Canada too. Um, and then we have our own sort of like fentanyl epidemic as well. And you know the nice thing is that coincidentally legalizing cannabis helps certain people get
Right.
off of that sort of thing as the exit drug that cannabis actually is.
Right,
So
not the gateway drug, right? Which is so
oh,
ironic that it was positioned for so long as this gateway drug, and now
alcohol is
we're
the gateway
finding.
drug. Like I don't know how that could have ever been disputed. Like
I agree. It's funny, and so that's interesting. So when you say like Canada, when y'all went legal, not much changed. So what do you mean by that? Is it like because people are so friendly in Canada to begin with that like I don't know,
good
or
observation. I mean, we were pretty cannabis friendly even before we legalized. So the sort of
okay,
idea that like even as a teenager, if police caught us with cannabis, they just take it and then like maybe throw the bong in the dumpster. And if you were smart enough, you could actually go get it and like bring it back home and salvage it, sort of thing. Or like they'd stomp on it, but they'd never arrest you or bring you home or anything like that. Like it was just more of like a discretionary thing, which I don't know. We always thought was like, well, that's always just going to be cannabis, but then it legalized. But
right,
besides that, it was just none of the horror stories that I think prohibitionists just sort of assume it's. So, yeah, there's some noise out there. I do apologize,
it's
but
okay.
yeah, prohibitionists just assume like their worst fears are all going to come to fruition if this happens. But I think in line with that, like there were a few cannabis shops that would open up, 2 blocks away. And what was unfortunate with our rollout was that the government didn't open enough stores because they wanted to ease into it, I think, and it just took a long time. But after I think a certain tipping point, which sort of coincided with I think easing of the pandemic at one point. Ontario started opening a lot more stores, um, but like my conviction just got even more because I'd been following Canadian sales and all that. But the conviction for the U.S. story, just like compared to how well fundamentally the U.S. MSOs were doing, and how the LPs were not doing well fundamentally, but because being on the big boards, that's a big advantage. And so, but just seeing shops open up like 3 blocks away, 2 blocks away, and now there's three within a block in the city I'm in. I happen to be a city, so this isn't the same everywhere, but like I'm just watching this happen. I'm like,
In real
yes,
time, you're seeing
yeah,
it.
in real time.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
cool. So
That is so
that
exciting. And there was something
yeah.
about Canada 2.0. Talk to us a little bit about that. Are you guys in that? Are we past 2.0? Are we in 3.0? Like what stage are y'all in?
2.0, 0.5 and a half, maybe. Like so that was the second sort of launch with edibles, vapes, and concentrates. Man, even to think back that was so long ago. So we would be I think we're still at the end of 2.0 because um, obviously the goal of our legalization was to get as much of the black market into the illicit or the illicit market into the legal market as much as possible. And I think they've accomplished they've eaten into that a good amount, and I think roughly 40 to 50% of the cannabis purchased they think was from the legal market versus like 20% when they started. So in terms of that being their goal, like that would be successful. But with the rollout, so they introduced edibles and vapes. Edibles, there's I think it's a 10 milligram or 5 milligram max, but so like you can sell 2 5 milligrams of THC. And I mean, obviously, just depending on your experience, I mean, 5 milligrams or 10 milligrams is nothing.
Right.
So, like, you just have to spend more money to get less strong sort of a product. So that wasn't as great. But the vapes was a very cool technology. And so I'd say we're still in that, and I don't think there's going to be nearly as much innovation in our product lines as in the US, though, just because the demand's not as there because we just don't have the people. But ultimately, we're still in 2.0, at least in Canada's aspect. I think 3.0 Todd references that being like, is that biotech or I don't know. I think that might be many.
I was just joking. I don't even know if there is a 3.0. I don't know. Is
I think
there?
3.0 might just be the US finally taking off. That would be like the third time's the charm, like to round that whole idea off. But no, I mean it's been good. But I think at the end of the day, one interesting thing of me watching that over time is that whether there's vapes or edibles available, people like flower. That's always gonna
Right.
um, last.
Yeah.
Be consistent.
I tweeted one time and said flower is king, and then I was rightfully corrected. I forget who the lady was, but flower is queen.
Flower is queen. That's a great.
Right? I
Yeah,
mean, she's right when she says that because the plant is female when it buds the flower. So
she is.
uh,
Now I'm curious though, because I personally just enjoy flower. I'm not much of one to try concentrates or anything like that. Have you tried dabs or like any of those concentrate stuff? And can you talk on that?
I have, yeah, I have quite a bit.
Is it
And
different than smoking flower? Is it more of an intense sort of experience?
it is, yeah, no, it's definitely more intense. And it's just that stupid high. You know, when you smoke way too much, like have you ever smoked a blunt?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So like if you're
Okay.
smoking a blunt and if it's just a small group of people that you're passing, so you're hitting it quite a bit very frequently, and then you're done, you know, how you just sit there and you're just kind of like not really talking. And that's at least my experience with dabbing.
So it's probably
Um
people that really need the pain relief.
yeah, that need the
Probably.
pain relief or just like to get blitzed out of their mind. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess I just don't like to get as blitzed as I used to. That might be my thing, but
Me either, man. I used to get like that, but now I just like a steady, consistent, you know, clear kind of just buzz, kind of high. You know, get me on the even keel where
right.
anxiety's down, stress is low, right? Like and I'm thoughtful with my words, I'm listening better. That's the state I like to be in.
Here and now, it's like attention, yeah, here and now. Bring yourself back into the moment.
Exactly.
For me as
What's
well, I would just always use it as like a reward at the end of the day. And comparable to a beer or a glass of wine, it beats it for me at least. Not to harp on any other consumers, but yeah.
No, everyone has their own vice. I get it. Yeah, but I think that's a great mindset to have, right? Especially for working out. Back in the day, I used to like in college, I would smoke and then go work out.
I used
And
to do that too, actually.
yeah, and I had a buddy that was like, "Hey man, like why don't you work out and then smoke after like as a reward?" And I would do that and what I really liked about it, not only the mindset of like I'm working towards something and then I feel like gratified at the end because you're relaxing, but like after a lift, you know, when you smoke that psychedelic feeling and then the cannabinoids and what they do, right? Like you can actually feel like the soreness kind of goes away is my point. Like you feel really more relaxed, you
Well,
know?
until you chill for too long and then you get tight, right? Which is
Right, right.
yeah. But no, I know exactly what you mean, and I found it. I don't know if you saw that New York Times article, but it was interesting of highlighting how it's the endocannabinoids in Sprinters High and not your endorphins, which is really
Yes.
cool.
It makes so much sense, man. I'm glad you brought that up. Like you've probably
And it's like a
felt when you
practical example because it's just like when would you feel that? It was like when I saw that though, that hit me and it was effective. So
yeah, for those listening, let's elaborate on that more. So what Jordan's saying is that the quote unquote runner's high that people experience or say that they experience, it's that feeling when you're right in the middle, you know, you're in the middle of your run and you're just feeling great and clear-headed, and it mimics basically the feeling of consuming THC.
yeah, and then I think too, like when you're done, it's sort of like that. Like your breath's a bit heavy, but you feel good, and it's. We're not scientists here. I don't claim or anything, but it's just sort of that mechanism of how the compounds bond with the endocannabinoid system that exists in our body,
Right,
and how
right.
how cool is that? Like, wouldn't you want to learn more?
It's bro science. This is what we're talking here.
It is.
Yeah. Well, what's your
Well,
experience with edibles?
I've never had one that was so ridiculous. Like I've never had such a bad time that I never wanted to do them again, or like a dose that was too high. Um, I typically, when I've experimented with edibles, it'd been like 25 milligrams to 50 milligrams, so nothing too strong.
Woo! See,
Um,
I can barely handle 25, man.
oh, really? Well, man, I've got a lot. I've got quite a tolerance, but like, let's just say like I'd say I'm a seasoned cannabis consumer, but I used to abuse it a lot more. Now I don't, but like I use it as like I like it a lot more now than I did because back then it was more of like yeah, using it for other reasons than just being
I'm
younger.
It's not a bad thing. I just
No, yeah, exactly.
with edibles, I don't have enough experience with them. I don't have them readily available to access. So when I go back to New Mexico, I'll have family members that have, you know, gummies or whatever. And there's some that they have that are like 50 milligrams or 100 milligrams. And for the 50 milligrams, I have to cut them in half and I'll eat one. And then like if I'm like before dinner or like in the afternoon, but then if I'm going to like I'll need to eat before I take the other half, just because
Interesting.
it's such a different experience than consuming flower and
And
smoking.
yeah, well, do you prefer to like if you're gonna consume an edible, do you prefer to not have consumed any flour that day, just so that you don't sort of mix the two experiences?
In hindsight, I would like that to happen, but it won't.
I'm weird like that, so I'll try to like not smoke until later on after I've consumed the edible. But all that to say is I typically just get my edibles from the black market though,
Yeah,
because obviously it's just better bang for your buck sort of thing, which is unfortunate. But if the government eased the regulations a little bit, I'd be happy to buy them from the store. Uh,
totally.
but no, yeah, I like edibles. It's very much different. I don't know if you've ever consumed or like you had hash too, but just
Yep.
like residue in your pipe and whatnot. It's similar to that, just like a different high, not as
I've
um,
have I've
groggy in the
had
head.
I've had Afghan hash before. When I in 2015 I went on like a Euro trip, and
Oh, nice.
Barcelona was one of the stops, and I was asking the locals like when outside of my Airbnb I was walking the streets and I was seeing where I could find cannabis, and they pointed me to this guy, and I got this like tin foil thing and I opened it and it was just a block of hash of Afghan, like, and it was just like a solid block that you broke off just chunks of it.
What color was it? Did it look gold or like brown?
It was like brown. Yeah, I wouldn't say gold. Is it supposed to be
Okay.
gold?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean,
Okay. It,
I'm sure
it was good.
it was hash.
Yeah, it worked. I mean, and
There
it
you go.
la-
That's all that matters,
and
especially when
hash,
you're on vacation.
yeah, it seems like hash lasts a really long time too. Like
I think it does.
when you burn it, like when you're consuming it, it has a shelf life. It doesn't burn right away.
Oh, possibly. I just know that you don't need to use a lot. Like, yeah, you can use a tiny amount. Um, and then hash is almost just like a warm blanket in the inside of your body. And then when you go to bed, you wake up the next morning, the blanket's just receded and
I've
you're
never
ready.
I like that. I haven't heard that one, but I agree. Yeah, that's a good way to
That's
put
almost
it.
like cannabis, I find though. You know, THC at the end of the day, and you go to bed, it's just like it's like a blanket, something warm just pressed on you, like, ah,
Yeah.
here, feel good.
With no hangovers and no misjudgment, I guess,
Yes, no, exactly. No double standard like society imposes on it.
Right. Well, let's talk about your YouTube videos, man. So like how do you go about fundamental analysis, particularly in cannabis? Like what are you looking out for right now based on some of the things that we've talked about at the federal level?
It's a good question. So there's like I consider myself a value investor, and when I first started learning, I read a lot of Warren Buffett. So like The Intelligent Investor, I try to read that every year. And there are a lot of books that really just pointed out from the get go. Like it was once I really understood that market cap's what's important and not the share price. Because I feel like everyone starts to learn investing and then they focus on the share price, but then you sort of realize how that's a representation of the market cap, and then comparing market caps to enterprise value and book value, and that's just sort of a one of Warren Buffett's staple. But the idea was that if you can find a company um, that is valued in the market a lot lower than what they're actually worth for whatever reason, um, that's considered an opportunity. And the greater the discount, like the more cheap the company is relative to where they should be at.
This sounds
Um,
very familiar.
yeah, exactly. Well, it's it's right there. It just jumps out at you in a way. And then of course people will point out, well, why aren't the share prices high then because of that? And well, market inefficiencies. But to get to your answer, what I look at, so it's like I wanted to find an entire sector. Not even that I wanted to find it. I was just fortunate enough to be like, oh, I liked cannabis growing up. How cool that this is actually starting and becoming a thing. And yeah, I always wondered why it wasn't mainstream and illegal. But so I started off just like always with that philosophy. I'm like, what's actually cheap value and underpriced? And so like obviously MSOs fit the bill, and it's tough though to compare them to other industries. So CPG, consumer packaged goods, I think that's what people typically try to compare that to. And so if you just look at price to sales or enterprise value to EBITDA, well, go price to sales, it's easier, but like 2x to 5x to 10x versus companies that trade on like major exchanges, 30x to 40x price to sales. Now it depends though. Like if you look at like some company, Microsoft, like now they're valued in trillions of dollars, so the price to sales is super low too. So it's so like I do try to look at that fundamental marker. So it's like what these companies are actually worth, what they will be worth in the future versus what their share price is. Like that's opportunity right there. But then besides that, there's all the writing in the wall that you can't ignore. That 17 billion was spent on cannabis last year, and they're going to spend on pace to spend 24 billion this year. There's the states, right? And just the fact how fragmented the US is, and that only 12 states, I think, or 13 markets are actually online legal for adult use, which means like New Jersey, like none of that is accounted for in the share price. So anyone that tries to say, oh, that's already priced in, they don't know what they're talking about. Like I can go on if you want any more examples, but just like I try to mix, what I at least know is tried and true and works with equity investing. So that's like finding a margin of safety. And for me, just this industry is a margin of safety in itself, and just the discrepancy that allows it to be that way. And then it's also like, for me, it started with the YouTube channel. I was like, last summer, I was like, the Dems could actually win because, things have just gone so far one way. I was like, they could win, like they could flip the Senate, like, and that inspired me to start the channel. And what sort of blew my mind was that it all actually sort of ended up happening, which was even crazier. But just the fact that I started that channel, and
so that was the inspiration. Like you saw it all kind of coming to fruition. I mean, you saw that
last
happen.
summer. I think it was last
Wow.
summer. I decided I just put all the money I had. Like so Afria was the main company that I didn't like made a good deal of money with, and I was lucky. But like I wrote it up with Canada's legalization. I didn't sell because I didn't know what I was doing, and I let greed get the best of me. But I didn't. At no point did I sell posts. Right? So I just had to like, okay, where did I go wrong? Where can I learn from this? And I treated it as a learning experience.
Wow.
But then it was summer of 2020 that I was just like, I think I had put about 25K into Afria already at that point. Like just over time, I was like, this is the one company that's so undervalued compared to Canopy and Aurora. And thankfully that all worked. And so that sort of gives me the confidence that, and another cycle is going to come through at some point. But
sure.
It was last summer that I was just like, I better start this channel because it could happen. And obviously this has taken a lot longer, but at the same time, what it does is just keeps me on top of all these factors that any investor, I think, should be looking for. And that's just what I try to relay with the episodes when I deliver them. So,
yeah, no, that's such a great mindset to have. And I try to apply the same to this podcast as well, right? I mean, there's a lot of people within Twitter that are upset, and not just within the cannabis sector. I see it everywhere, man. Like this instant wanting of gratification, the instant, right? Like I want to see a return. I want to see this thing go to the moon. Like why isn't the share price moving? And it's not going to happen like that, right? Especially in cannabis. And I think that the mindset that you have in terms of this is an opportunity to continue learning, right? And continue adding value, right? Like outside of the inevitable, like we're beefing up our brain power here, for what's to come. And I think that's a great asset to have.
Yeah, so many people want to control things, and they're like, look, we're playing this game, so don't try to, it's not going to help. Yeah, exactly. And you can waste so much energy getting angry or upset and wanting things to work out, but like you said, the longer this takes, the more opportunity we have. And like that's where I've gotten to a point where I'm in December or come January, I'm going to start looking for work if share prices don't turn around, because like ideally I just don't want to have to, like I'm a good amount diversified where I'd want to trim some of the tier 2 MSO assets just so that I don't have to necessarily start working again right now based on the projects I'm working on. But like I'm considering it because it's the smart thing to do, because I know in the US, I think your Roth IRA contribution limit, you can only do 6,000 a year, right?
I believe that's correct. Yes.
So in Canada, we have what's called the tax-free savings account. What's nice about our account is that if you don't contribute 1 year, it carries over to the following year.
Oh, wow.
So, and the best part was when it opened in 2019, the TFS, or in 2009, the TFSA was created. I only started using mine in 2017 or 2018. So I had like 70,000 of accumulated contribution room. And I just, over time, I'd maxed it out since getting back from 2017 to now. So I can't even contribute money until January. Damn. So I'm thinking ahead though. I'm like, the longer it takes, I'll just start making more capital to put in.
Hey, make more capital, play on words, man. I caught that.
I with the channel too. I just try to show people that it's a dynamic situation. It's constantly evolving. It's not just done, and you can go chase other shiny objects. But at the end of the day, if you were to look at how every sector has performed on the charts or like market wise this year, cannabis would have probably been one of the worst. But if you look at the fundamentals of a single industry, how they've actually performed, and like the growth prospects, um, although MSOs have performed the worst, they're some of the healthiest companies, right? So it's like I know where I want to put the money, and that's where the value is gonna go, not where the value is now, sort of thing.
That's what's so crazy. I think I saw MJ Stock Trader on Twitter tweet the quarterly revenue of the MSOs, and every quarter this year they've increased. Like all the top five, not all MSOs, but the top five that we've been following, right? Like
Well, those are the safe bets. Those are the safe companies. Like they're established. They're legit. They've got like so it's hard to go wrong with them because they're great companies.
they're great. Yeah. And that's why again it goes back to just the opportunity. Time is on our side, and we're fortunate for that, and we might as well make the most of it.
Yeah, exactly. And if people want to be upset or get angry and about they're just trying to control what they can't control, and they've got other stuff to probably deal with on their plate. So, and I think that's just a part of the cannabis culture. Like I wouldn't have it any other way because I know once safe passes, it's done. Like
It's done.
we're
It's
gonna like
done.
we're gonna go up, and then there's probably gonna be another 2 year lull before another cycle of any
Right.
sort of like I've thought that like do you see I don't see the U.S. legalizing it any like it'll be decriminalization if at any point, but like I don't
It
and
won't it won't be full legalization right away. I would
I don't think
predict
so.
I would predict legalization will happen in I always go to tiered 5 to 7 to 10 years. I can't guess when, but it's gonna be at least 5 years from now. And what's going to pressure in my opinion, what's going to pressure the federal government to move forward with legalization is going to be the states. I don't think that any party is going to be able to get it done. They're going to slowly reform. Safe banking will happen, uplisting, removal of 280E, all those hurdles. But I can't imagine. I would imagine that the hand's going to be forced at the
Yeah.
state level.
Well, because I was optimistic that like we're gonna get legalization, man. Schumer, he knows that it's gonna make him a legend. No, he's not that wise anymore. But it was just funny on that comment because what I saw too, or at least like playing out, was that safe happening. I mean, before the midterms because they need that sort of win. But then like the States Act is a very viable play. You have the deschedule. Like there's just so many avenues. And at this point, it's almost just like do something, like sending that, asking Merrick Garland to address descheduling. Like he could have started that process, and that would have changed things overnight. I think we're just waiting on that big catalyst, and like sure, it can be annoying to say the when, not if, but like as long as you're planning for it accordingly, it's gonna come. But it's like as an American, do you think? Because every American that I hear says the Dems are going to lose next midterms, but I think they base that off of historically, usually whatever party's in doesn't get voted back in, sort of thing. Like I'm just curious what you think based on because actually, I should probably know this. I keep a good eye on like the House and all that, but just curious like whether the House would get. But I think ultimately the best part is safe's bipartisan, right? At this point, like. And there's no going back from that.
That's what it seems like from the articles that I've read, that both parties agree. Come on, let's get safe passed here. Like
it would make sense. And at the same time, there's $24 billion of cash flowing in the US economy. That's unsafe. That is unsafe. And there are people dying from armed robberies because that does make the dispensaries targets. So it's like, Booker, come on.
Come on, man. Come on, do your job. Yeah. It's frustrating, man. But in my experience, just kind of watching politics throughout the years, it's such a win for either party, right? Like cannabis is huge, and I don't think that the Democrats are in any rush, to move on this. They're gonna hold it hostage and trickle it out. They're gonna tease it out, for the midterm elections, for eventually the reelection, for the administration.
Yeah, right.
Um,
They
I
can do that, and why wouldn't they
and,
ultimately?
and that's why I see the the 5 to 10 year. But no one knows, right? This is all speculation. Who knows? Tomorrow
Oh, exactly.
they could totally flip the script and say, hey, we're doing this. Let's be progressive. I don't know. You never know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like the thing is, there is pressure coming from all sides, and that can't be ignored as well. Like the amount of it is really just incredible to see the amount of lobbying that is for cannabis now versus even just 5 years ago, probably how much there was against it. Um, and yeah, we're getting to. I don't know, I think we're at a tipping point. Like November is going to be a very exciting month. I don't know about you, but it feels like Christmas has come early. And it's
I feel that
coming
way.
early.
I put a poll out. I'm excited. I don't have they set a date for when they're gonna vote? Or like how is that like when is that
I don't know.
happening? Do we know?
We don't know. I've heard that the latest possible date that Congress goes on recess on December 10th. So ideally, NDAA has to be passed by December 10th.
Got you.
That's when Congress goes on recess. But um, yeah, I'm not sure. I think safe is the next step, and like I want to be confident, and I want to go with Brady Cobb's like Q4 call, and it just like it
He's
does make
he's
sense.
he's doubling down. Brady Cobb
Well,
thinks it's happening Q4, man.
but he's a DCN. Like, do you? He if there was a good source out there that was on the ground working with us and on our side, it's him, right? You know what I
Oh
mean? So like,
yeah, he's super sharp. I've had him on the podcast. He knows his shit. Yeah,
he's
yeah, and
very sharp.
that's why I'm calling it out. Like he's doubling down, so he must have true conviction that this is gonna happen.
And
Which would be awesome. I mean,
exactly. And I think Boris also said on the AMA tonight that was on Reddit that as of right now, from his understanding, like safe's still in the NDAA in the version. Like it hasn't been taken out or anything like that. So better than hearing. But I think too with the bipartisan support, it's not a good look on Schumer to take it out, and they're going to make him do that publicly if he does, and
that
that's
is
not a
a
good look.
that is a great point, man. That's a great point. That's one thing where he's gonna get called out big time if he ends up doing that. It's on him, really.
Should like, and he should, rightfully so. So that's why
Yeah.
you just think that like as much as he does want to drag this on, he would just keep safe in there because we've got that win.
I wonder though if he's so late in his political career that not that he like it, not that he wouldn't care, but maybe it wouldn't be such a blow to the Democratic Party because he may be on his way out. I don't know. That could be another factor.
But well, that's a good point to mention. But and I do think quote me or don't quote me, but just if you know, is he running against AOC? I think for New York.
I have no idea. You would know more than I
I
don't
bel
know.
I
Yeah,
believe he is running against AOC for New York, the Senate seat. I think. So that would
wow.
be interesting because he then does have to appeal. Like he would then have to win New York over AOC, and that probably wouldn't be an easy ticket.
That's gonna be tough to do. Yeah,
Yeah. So I mean, that would also give, I think, just as someone an outsider watching, like what would be the best thing? More incentive for him to take a win now
that's
and
true.
try and do see like, but at the same time, we've been doing that all year, and he's just like dragged on stuff. And what's funny too is like we know politicians typically are crafty with their words. So like they'll say one thing and mean others, and people always get angry. Like, oh, politicians always say they're going to do something that they never go through it. And like, sadly, Schumer has done everything that he said, which sucks.
Which is nothing.
Which is nothing because he's like, it goes soon, soon, and then he goes, yes, well, we have agreements not to do anything until like
What's the famous tweet? He goes, my colleague senators Ron Wyden and Senator Booker are fighting for cannabis reform. It's that same bullet, that same
it,
boilerplate tweet that he does every
it
week.
sucks. It's so annoying to see that, and it just I wonder if he probably doesn't care, but just he must. It gets us so frustrated to see that, but it's just so funny that like
The interns are having to deal with that shit. Well, the
yeah,
backlash from the MSO gang.
they must be hating it. But no, it's good, and I mean the best thing people can do is put pressure on their state reps and like call into their senators and whatnot.
Totally. Yeah.
Um, like this is the time for America to make noise and really, if there's one thing that can bring the country together despite all the division and the political tension, I think it would be cannabis. So
I totally agree, man. I think that that's a good place to end here, man. I want to give the floor to you though, Jordan. This has been a great conversation. It's been a really good back and forth. And I want to know what's top of mind for you. We've talked about, U.S. federal legalization and reform efforts. We've talked about the importance of passing safe banking. We've talked about Make More Capital and your YouTube channel and really how you're trying to empower the community within cannabis to be smarter investors. Like, what do you want to leave the audience with?
Well, if there are any retail investors tuning in that want to learn more about how they can take advantage, then just check out my YouTube channel, Make More Capital, and I do 2 episodes a week, midweek update, and then a Sunday this week in cannabis news. But I try to go through as much of whatever stories was featured that week, and I've been doing this for over a year, so like there's plenty to go back. But like if you were to watch maybe 10 episodes, like the last Sunday, it'd be a wealth of knowledge just based on what's actually coming. And so for investors, obviously wise to look more forward and see the bigger picture, not necessarily what's going on right now with the price action, and try to zoom out and see what's coming. Like the Great American Growth Story, it seems pretty clearly ahead. But ultimately for me, is November. Like just on the last point, it's funny because like Schumer said a lot of things too, and I try to read between the lines. I'd be like, oh, he says that, but states need functional banking, and I'm out of these talking points. So at the end of the day, like November is going to be a big month, and whether we get it or we don't, for anyone out there, just plan accordingly. It doesn't stop evolving, but when it does happen, it's done. So like, or it's done for a period of time, and you don't want to be holding bags. And this happens. This is a cycle. Like, and so I would just love to see uplisting, but at the same time, I mean, I should not be able to rip on all that and me wanting to make money without also like putting it out there that like I wish the stigma it would be great if we could, as quickly as possible, try to normalize cannabis, remove that stigma, get anyone who's in jail out of jail. Like, it just sucks that at the same time that also exists, simultaneously. So
Right.
I don't know, just continue to spread the awareness though, like you mentioned. That's put it. Just like the plant has a lot more in store than I think most people think, and it's just every one of us individuals that it's helped. We're just trying to spread good information. But keep your eyes out for November, I would say then try to get in before November, just in case. Yes. Just in case, because like you miss that train, it'd be tough to want to get back on. So
yeah, have money in the account, in the broker account. Be ready to pull the trigger, because either way, like we've talked about earlier in this podcast, it's going to go either way. Either they're going to hit rock bottom, or they're going to move. So I'll tell you one thing, Jordan, I'm definitely going to be subscribing to your YouTube channel. I'm adding you to my experts to follow list when it comes to my ongoing education for investing. So really appreciate your insights, man. I've really enjoyed the conversation. And let's catch up again after November, maybe December or early 2022. Let's talk about what's changed and just, chop it up.
Yeah, let's do it, man. It was great to chat and finally connect with you as well formally. So thanks for having me on. And you can find me YouTube, Instagram, or TikTok at Highly Invested.
Cool.
Well.
And I'll make sure to put all those links in the bottom of this YouTube channel in the description box. So
great, man. Until then, onward.
That's right. Hey, all we can do is press forward. Thank you so much again, Jordan. And thank you all for listening. Bye.